Hey, I'm Raina Mermaid, and welcome to my relaunched So You Want to Be a Mermaid series. We're going to be looking at all the different things that help you be a mermaid, either professionally or recreationally, or maybe you just want to learn some tips from other pros and how you can improve your mermaid life. And on today's show, we are talking about freediving and why it is so important for mermaids to have freediving training, for merwranglers to have freediving training. Even if you're recreational and you're never swimming in the ocean, freediving training is for you. But first of all, if you have no idea what freediving is, there's a fantastic article that I spent a lot of time researching, and I put it on my blog, mermaidrangler.com. So you can see a whole history of freediving, what it was used for, what it's used for now, safety tips, things about competitions, different organizations, and some of the risks and some of the benefits. And today we're just going to be talking specifically about my experience and Sean's experience taking a freediving course through PADI. So freediving has several governing bodies, and one that we have in Canada is called IDA. There's IDA Canada and IDA International, and IDA's mandate is to help go to places where freediving isn't really a thing yet and cultivate it as a sport and help people get the resources they need so that they can get properly freediving trained. Now, the downside to IDA is that they're very competitively focused, which means that they do a lot of competitions, so maybe not always the best for someone who's recreational like us. And even though we are doing it for a business, so we consider it professional, in the spectrum of what freediving is, it actually would be considered more recreational because we aren't competing, we're not in mermaid tails going down super deep and coming back up for some sort of contest or competition. I know there are some mermaids who do that in other countries, but mostly in North America it's not really a thing here. In Halifax, we have no way to get freediving certified. We have a whole group of people who are really interested in freediving, and we formed the Halifax Freedivers, and we started to train together, and everyone spent money to fly in some instructors through IDA Canada from a group called Apnea City, and they came to instruct us in freediving, and they decided to give us the PADI freediving course. They gave us level 1 and level 2, which is beginner and advanced. Beginner focuses just on the pool, and advanced focuses on in the ocean. So if you're a mermaid and you're not really in the ocean, but you are in a pool and you want to be able to hold your breath and take pretty pictures and swim for a long time on a single breath hold, level 1 is still really good. Now, the two courses together is about $500, but if you're just going to do the first course, it's a little over $200. After tax, it comes a bit closer to $300, but it's fantastic. I cannot recommend it enough. This thing has changed my life. When you sign up for the PADI course, whether you're flying someone in like we did or you find a freediving program, you will get sent an e-learning component so that you can learn some of the theory behind freediving before you get to the class. The PADI freediving course works best on a tablet. This is what it was designed for, and it's really user-friendly. You've got your objectives, and it tells you everything that you need to see. And it's got all these different components to it. There's videos, there's little self-tests, there's all these interesting pieces that you can learn. It covers really everything about freediving, the basics of freediving, safety aspects, being underwater, the gear that you need. These are things that you're going to cover in your class, but it's really good to read it first. Some of the things that I really enjoyed learning in the freediving e-learning component is some of the science behind it. So, one of the key features about holding your breath underwater is imagine that your lungs are a balloon. And as you go deeper and deeper and deeper into the water, that balloon that represents your lungs and your oxygen is going to shrink from the pressure. So your capacity for air is getting smaller and smaller and smaller. But likewise, when you come up, it's going to expand and get bigger and bigger and bigger until it's back to normal size. Why is this important? A lot of mermaids have this misconception that they can dive down and very easily breathe off of a breathing tube or a scuba tank of compressed air and come back up with no problem. It is literally one of the riskiest things that you can possibly ever do. In fact, in our courses, they tell us never to do it. People who do it for stunts and things like that are super trained on it, and it's still very dangerous. The problem is when you're down there and you take a sip of air, your lungs are going to expand as you come up, and you could literally pop your lungs. You also have an increased risk of getting the bends. And basically, if you take that sip of air, you are now a scuba diver. So we all know that the wiki-wachi mermaids use an air hose, but you have to remember that they have been grandfathered into this. They have exclusive, intense training that is on par with scuba diving, and it's really not something you should be messing around with and experimenting with, because you could die, and as soon as a mermaid dies, it's going to be horrible and traumatic, and also be awful for the industry. So we really need to keep that standard high so that we're all being safe. So that's one interesting thing I learned. Another interesting fact I learned is that the urge you get to breathe is not actually from a lack of oxygen, but rather from a buildup of carbon. And that contraction that you get is actually just a very, very early warning sign that's more of a brain game. It's not really that you need air. You get to a point where yes, you will need air, but for most people doing that first couple of minutes, you actually don't need air. And there's this big misconception that you can get brain damage from not enough oxygen. That is from the oxygen circulating in your blood. It's not to do with the oxygen in your lungs. In fact, when freedivers have underwater blackouts, very rarely do they actually have water in their lungs. They don't breathe it in. They just black out and shut down. And then when they're brought to the surface, they actually have to be reminded to breathe, which is something I found very interesting as well. They don't usually need CPR, but sometimes emergency oxygen is needed, and you blow and tap on their face to try to get that brain response, to get somebody to breathe. It was just such an amazing course. I learned so much. It was super empowering. I learned about all the gear that we need, and I tapped into this strength that I didn't know that I had in order to do the course. It was really cool. So if you're going to do a freediving course, what do you need? First of all, you may want to wear a wetsuit, just because even if it's in a warm pool, you want to be comfortable. The air and the water can be the same temperature, but because of how that energy is shared and how it releases, you can feel colder in the water than you do in the air. So even in warm water, it's important to wear some kind of suit, even if it's just a nice little shorty, which is what I wore. And if you're going to wear a suit, you're going to need a weight belt. One of the things I learned about freediving weight belts is that you actually don't want to use nylon. You want rubber, because the rubber is going to stretch and expand and shrink with you as you move. Because remember, as we go deeper, things are going to compress. And so if you're practicing with a weight belt and you've got nylon, it might slide up to your arms and down, even if you have it really tight. But if you're wearing rubber, it can actually stay on you. Now, with mermaids, weight belts are sort of a tricky thing. We don't really have a formal system. Some people wear decorated weight belts, other people put weights in their tails, which can be a little bit tricky as well, and some people wear weights around their necks in these, it's like a freediving weight necklace. Being able to get your weights off in an emergency is so important, because if you do black out and someone is trying to bring you to the surface, ditching those weights is going to help them. Or if you're trying to come up and you need that extra boost, you can ditch your weight belt. So we kind of have to be careful in the mermaid industry, because everybody uses weights in a bit of a dangerous way. But that's where your safety buddy comes in. Really, if you're holding your breath underwater, you need a safety swimmer with you. That person is going to be swimming along the top, watching you. You're going to be communicating with them and saying what you're going to do. So I'll be like, hey Sean, I'm going to go under. I'm going to do 3 flips. If I feel like it, I'm going to swim a little bit this way, and then I'm going to come up for air. So I've now communicated to Sean that I'm going to do that. Well, what happens when I go down and do 1 flip and then all of a sudden start going really deep? Sean knows that that's not what we discussed, and he's going to dive down and get me. Now, when you're being a buddy to someone, it's important that you are super attentive to what's going on, which can be really, really tricky. You don't want to get distracted by anything. In order to be an effective buddy, you're going to need goggles and a snorkel. And I say this because I actually never use a snorkel, and trying to do the course with a snorkel in my mouth was really uncomfortable. They actually recommend that you don't use these fancy snorkels like this with all these extra pieces. You just want something super duper simple, and don't even have to clip it on your goggles, but really just have it stuck in the side so that you can spit it out when you need it. So you should be breathing through your snorkel, looking through your goggles when you're being a buddy for somebody, and watching their every move. And when you take a freediving course, they teach you what to do in an emergency, how to save someone who is blacked out, how to save someone who has had a loss of motor control. I personally experienced a loss of motor control once, but I didn't know that that's what I experienced. In 9 years of being a mermaid, I've never really felt like I had a near drowning experience. But one time I was performing in very cold water and I was hyperventilating. Hyperventilation is the worst thing you can do if you're going to be swimming and holding your breath. There's this big misconception where people think it's a good thing. It's not. It uses up too much of the oxygen in your body and builds up too much carbon, and you can get hypoxic. And when you dive down and you've been doing this, you almost get like a runner's high, like euphoria, which makes you feel like you're safer than you actually are, and you can just completely lose functioning of your body. You may not pass out, but you can lose functioning, and this happened to me. I was freezing cold and I was swimming down. I had my adrenaline pumping because I wanted to impress people with my tricks. I did have a lifeguard who was safety spotting me. She and I had a system. Every time I came up for air, I had to give her my thumbs up, my okay signal. Yep, I'm okay, I'm good. So I dove down, I'm doing my tricks, and I come up, and I give the okay signal, but I say, you know what, I feel kind of numb and shaky, so I think it's time for me to get out. I swim over to the side, and I go to put my hands on the side, and I just start shaking really bad, and then I just started convulsing. I didn't black out, but I completely lost control of my body. I felt numb, and I just felt almost drunk. And my lifeguard had to grab me by the arms, and Sean had to grab me, and they pulled me up and sat me down. And only when they sat me down did I realize I was absolutely frozen, and I've been hyperventilating way too much. So even when you think you're safe and you have all these things in place, we often think that we can do more than we can actually do, and that's why it's so important to have that safety person with you. You should never, ever, ever be swimming alone. The course itself was amazing. I did the online portion, then we had a classroom portion, then we had a pool portion. For people who were going on to do the advanced course, they then did ocean portion. I didn't do the ocean portion yet because I'm taking some medications to help fix my nose and ears. I have a problem with my nose and ears, and the air can't get through properly. So I'm doing this treatment, and once it's done, I should be able to pass the second part, because for the second part in the ocean, you have to be able to dive down deep and do certain recovery things in the ocean as well. But however, I was great in the pool. You had to hold your breath for 1.5 minutes to pass the course, and I managed to hold my breath for 2.5 minutes. It was really, really amazing. They teach you all these techniques to calm you down and get your body acclimated. It was great. Next, you had to swim 40 meters underwater holding your breath. I did this in 2 different ways, actually 3 different ways. I did it with a monofin, I did it with bifins, and I did it with my mermaid tail, which is really cool. And one of the things I got to do was wear a weight belt with my mermaid tail. It may not have been pretty, but I have to tell you, I was such a better swimmer when I was wearing the weight belt. And 2 things that I learned about my own swimming technique and the struggles I have is that, number 1, if you're getting obsessively bad foot cramps when you're swimming, it's likely that you're doing your kick too strong and you need to streamline things a little more. So technique needs to be zoned in a bit. But it's very difficult to fix your technique if you're floating too much, because really then you're just compensating with being at the surface. That's why being weighted is so important. So we had to do that, and then we did these drills where we had to save each other, and it was so hard. We would be a buddy for someone and practice, and I'd be a buddy swimming along the top, and my person would be going under, and then they had to fake having an accident, and I had to dive down and get them and get their head above water, swim up, and bring them back to shore. Now, when I was just practicing with Sean and Nessie, this wasn't too hard. When I had to do it for the actual freediving instructor, if he was real, he would have drowned. I panicked, I treaded water, I forgot that it was just fake, and had trouble remembering that I should bring him in. He also had this weight thing around his neck that I couldn't get off, and it was really eye-opening. It was very eye-opening to how difficult this can be. We also learned how to save somebody if they're floating at the surface, and how to move their arms in and flip them over so that you can wake them up and save them. We watched videos of people having underwater blackouts, and they can happen for just a second, and the person may not even know that they've had it. It's really crazy stuff. But I enjoyed it so much. I learned so much. It was so empowering. And I'm completely changing the safety aspect of my mermaid company now. I've always been very forthcoming with safety. We hire lifeguards, we hire instructors. Everybody has first aid training, everybody has water safety training, everybody has AED training, all that stuff. But now that I've actually done this course, it's like it was tailored to mermaids, and I think that every mermaid should do it. It is worth the investment. And if you are claiming your money at tax time, you can write off this course as necessary training. I also believe it'll help bring down insurance prices, and I also believe it will help people get into different venues. It was such a rewarding experience for us. I cannot recommend doing freediving training enough. I can't wait to do my second course. So I've basically done 1.5. I've done the beginner and I've done the theory and classroom of the advanced. But now I need to have this procedure done and then I can finish the advanced, which is really amazing because you may know I've been swimming with earplugs my whole life. One of the things I learned how to do was equalize properly. Most people wait too long to equalize. They wait until they feel pain. But really, when you dive down, you should be equalizing right away and equalizing all the way down. Then you don't have pain and you don't hurt your ears. And just that little tiny change made a huge difference in my ability to focus and swim and stay the way I needed to stay in order to do that breath hold and that length.
When we went to the freediving course, I did not know what to expect.
And what happened when you were there?
When I was there, I had more fun than I thought, and it was actually a good time. You basically had to hold your breath, swim underwater, do all the stuff you used to do when you were a kid, pretty much, but now there's a reason.
What did you manage to accomplish while you were there?
I held my breath for 2 minutes and swam 40 meters consecutively, and did blackout training in case somebody blacks out in the water. You can know how to rescue them and get them out of the water, essentially, or bring them back to consciousness as best you can.
Why do you think you were able to hold your breath for 2 minutes?
Because I'm stubborn. And because I swim a fair bit with mermaids, I think I've just got used to the underwater photography aspect of things. Pretty comfortable in water at this point, but...
Remember you said that they help you with mind games?
Right, oh yeah. It was a lot of mind games. No question it was a lot of mind games. In that positive, they basically taught you and encouraged you to swim holding your breath longer and longer to the point where then you needed to hold your breath and not move, which allowed your lungs to basically conserve energy, and suddenly you can hold your breath longer, so it's really neat.
Why do you think it's important for merwranglers to have freediving training?
Safety. You've got a bunch of vulnerable people, and most likely kids or folks that otherwise could be at risk. And if they're performing or if there's something going on, you have to make sure that you can save them in a timely manner.
Did you enjoy it?
Yes. I enjoyed my time freediving and getting PADI freedive certified.
What level did you get?
Just level 1. But I'll get level 50 or something later.
Okay, great. It was just so amazing and really practical, and it's just like first aid training. You do all this practical stuff so that you know what you're doing. I can't recommend it enough. Definitely go out and do it. If you're like me and there's nowhere that offers it, try to find some people who want to do it. Put up an ad online, find other mermaids, and then split the cost of bringing somebody in. That's what we did, and it was so worth it. Best money I ever spent. I can't wait to finish it, and I hope you will check out a freediving course too. Thank you so much for checking out my video. Please give it a like, please subscribe, please share it with your mermaid friends, and if you have a topic that you'd like to see, please leave me a note in the comments. Check me out on social media and be sure to check out my blog, www.merwrangler.com. You can also find a lot of my resources about being a mermaid at makemeamermaid.com, including my books. Best fishes!